In the first episode of her podcast, entitled Dad Project, Janelle introduces us to something she calls the inciting incident. This, she mentions, is the first major event of a story. It's something that radically changes the narrative and everybody involved. As an international student here in Lancaster, I quickly learned that all inciting incidents are not created equal. This eureka moment came to me during my narratives class when our professor asked us to write 3 major life events. After we'd written down a list, she told us to pick one item that we'd like to share with the rest of the class. She started calling our names in alphabetical order, and one by one, my classmates stood up and shared their life events. As I listened to their stories, I couldn't help but wonder if I had misunderstood the exercise. You see, people were talking about summer vacations they'd gone to and unfortunately lost their funds and had to wait for an entire 2 weeks to get a replacement. I looked at my list again and I started plotting an exit plan. You see, I was 34 years old at the time, and I'd flown all the way from Nairobi, Kenya to restart my higher education here in Lancaster. In class with me were 18 and 19-year-olds, most of whom lived 20 or 30 minutes drive away from campus. Some of them had been homeschooled, and being in college was their first major life event. So don't get me wrong. I have nothing against their age, nothing against the fact that they live a stone throw away from campus, and definitely nothing against their schooling journey up until that moment we met in that narratives class. I, however, hold that moment dearly because it was an inciting one for me. It made me look back to my own personal journey and see how far I had come. You see, at 17, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. A few years later, I got a mental health diagnosis. While my friends and age mates at the time were enjoying campus life, I was struggling with why sometimes I had bursts of energy and other times I couldn't do things as simple as live in bed or even brushing my teeth. As I was learning that the shifts in energy are called mania and depression, and if you have them together, you have something called manic depressive disorder or bipolar, as some people call it, my friends were learning the tools and skills for young adulthood. And so back to my classroom. As my classmates continued sharing their stories, I looked at my list again and decided maybe I should change it to something lighter and not traumatize these teenagers with my life journey. But before I could think of a fake summer vacation stories that would rhyme with what everybody else was sharing, the professor called my name. And so I stood up and I said that my life has been on pause and I don't have any major life events to report because ill health made my life become a whole overdue pile. And as I said this, I felt proud of myself. Proud of the fact that I did not change my list to rhyme what everybody else was sharing. Proud of how far I had come because I had waited for more than 15 years to have a moment like that where I could stand in a class and share about what I was learning. In the last episode of her podcast, Janelle talks about closure. And she says that though she was not able to get any closure in her own narrative, she was able to get something else, a resolution, a release of thoughts. And that's how I felt in that class. I felt a release that helped me embrace the fact that everybody has a journey that is uniquely crafted and tailor-made just for them. That life does not happen in a mechanical way where everything happens at the same time in the same way for everybody. That sometimes, if we are brave enough to embrace our overdue pile, we sign ourselves up to a lifetime of adventure, which sometimes leads you into situations where you become a 34-year-old in a class half full of homeschooled teenagers.